Hey everybody, welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington. My name is Kathryn Kauffman, and I'm a psychic medium here in Lexington, Kentucky. Welcome to my every Monday night show. This is where we discover what and who we are on this journey called life. Welcome, everybody. The purpose of the Monday night shows is I take questions that my clients ask me on a weekly basis. And if I find that a lot of people are asking the same thing, I put it together and present it here on the Monday Night Live shows so that you have all the resources that you need. That way, if people have questions that go past the regular session, I can just refer them to the YouTube channel and they can find out more about, the answers to a lot of their questions. Let's do some quick shout outs here. Hey, to big kisses to Melissa Begley and her sidekick, Miss Cleo, Paige Denise, Yasmin Jadoon, Angela Atkins. Special shout out to Ricky Elkins. I hope you're doing okay, fella. Dana Likens, Fleener, Matt Frazier, Brenda J. Campbell Payne, and let's see, Charlotte Northcutt, how are you? Yes, Melissa, it is a magical Monday indeed. Cha-cha-cha. Shout out to Joy over here on Instagram. Good to see you. And KYGS Ryder on Instagram. Thanks for joining me. I put some snowflake flurries on the Instagram live only because it was 60 degrees here today in Lexington, and I'm pretty well thinking that this backdrop of snow is like the only snow that we're going to get this year. I'm so disappointed we don't have any snow, you guys. It just doesn't feel like it's even been winter. Special shout out on the professional page to Sharon May Maddox. For those of you guys on the professional page, if you want to join in the live chat, the personal page is the only page that I look at for the live chat. And I did leave a link in the description box for you to click on if you want to come on over here and make a comment or ask a question. Also, if you have any questions at all about the comment, go ahead and put them in the comments. And if I don't see them during the show, I promise you I will get back to those questions as soon as I can. I always try to answer all of the questions. So Joy says, Mystical Monday. That's straight up. You are right. What about that manic date yesterday? Yes, that was crazy, wasn't it? And so tonight's episode is all about psychometry. So how many of you know what psychometry is? Special shout out to my daughter-in-law, Brooke Ewell Lawrence. Good to see you here. Big kisses. Love to you guys. And Melissa Lott. And see, Joy says, KY Ryder is my fab hubby Tom. Awesome. Glad to see you're both on here. Psychometry is under the umbrella of clairsentience, and clairsentience is clear sensing. A lot of us have the basic ability of empathic clairsentience. So clairsentience is clear sensing. It has to do with the senses. And feeling is one of the biggest senses that we use as clairsentience. And clairsentience consists of three different things. I feel, which is the empath. I know, which is like psychic intuition. And I feel, which is psychometry. So I'm going to read you a couple of definitions of psychometry, and then we're going to go into a little bit of the history behind it, because it was really interesting to find this out. So psychometry is the ability to discover facts about an event or person by touching inanimate objects associated with them. Like when I'm doing a mediumship, a lot of people will bring, you know, a loved one's jewelry, their rings or their watches or their necklace in to be read by me. Metal is some of the best psychometric type of objects to read, and I think it's because it holds onto the vibration or the electromagnetic field better. Hey to Ezra and Veronica. So a person who's psychometric can receive impressions from an object by holding it in their hands or touching it to the forehead. Now, this was something that was historically done by one person that they experimented with in psychometry. And then it was kind of spoofed on, I don't know if you guys remember the Johnny Carson show when he had the turban on and would hold the letter to his head. That was a kind of a spoof on psychometry, kind of a funny, but we'll get into how that started with the history. So a person who's a psychometrist or who has psychometric abilities, let's say they could also hold like an antique or vintage item and tell something about the history of that item, maybe the person who owned it, the experiences that were associated with it. The psychic may also be able to tell some of the traits of the person who actually owned the item, or even maybe how they died. But most important, the psychic can sense how they felt at a particular time. And I think that that's because it works through that clairsentient or clear sensing ability. Hey to Rita Fox. And Charlotte says, we'll have snow on the ground before, I hope so, before winter is over. I hope so. I just want to see one good snow before all of the blooms start to come up. Hey to Felicia Noble. Okay, let me check on the professional page to make sure there's no questions over there. And awesome, we're cool. So here's the history of psychometry. It was a term that was coined by Joseph R. Buchanan in 1842 from the Greek word psyche, meaning soul, and metron, meaning measure of the soul. That was really interesting. So he was an American professor of physiology, and what he did was he did experiments with his students where he placed various drugs in small glass vials, and then he experimented with the students by asking them to hold the vials and identify the drugs that were in the vial simply by touching the vial. Their success rate was more than chance, and he published his results in his book, The Journal of Man. And so what he theorized after this was that all objects have a soul that retains a memory. And so that's kind of where he based his theory. So then a little bit later, we have another American professor of geology, William F. Denton, and he conducted experiments to see if psychometry would work with his geological specimens. And so this is a little bit later in 1854. So what he did was he enlisted the help of his sister, whose name was Anne, and the professor wrapped the specimens up in cloth so that Anne couldn't tell what the shape, what the color, or any identifying characteristic of the specimens were. So what she did was she then placed the packages to her forehead and was able to accurately describe the geological specimens with vivid detail of what they were exactly. So that's pretty phenomenal if you think about it. Then a little bit later, we get into 1919 and 1922, and I'm probably going to butcher this name. He's a German doctor, Gustav Poggenstecher, and he was also a psychical researcher, and he discovered psychometric abilities in one of his patients, Maria Reis de Zeerold. While holding an object, Maria could place herself in a trance and state facts about the object's past and present, describing sights, sounds, smells, and other feelings about the object's experience in the world. So what this doctor theorized was that a psychometrist could tune into the experiential vibrations that were condensed into the object. So that was in 1922. Hey to Bob Schultz, Crystal Sparrow, Dawn, Sharon, and Garnetta. And if you guys have any questions about the psychometry, lay it on me. I'm ready for you. The next more recent thing, the most recent thing that we have to look at is the book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And he says that psychometric abilities suggest that the past isn't lost, but still exists in some form accessible to human perception. Now, that's important because in past shows, we were talking about how time isn't linear, and time is only linear in our perception, but in reality, it's a location in time space. Okay, so this matches up perfectly with what Michael Talbot is saying, is that the past isn't lost, but still exists in some form accessible to our perception. With the scientific knowledge that all matter on a subatomic level exists essentially as vibrations or locations, Talbot asserts that consciousness and reality exist in a kind of hologram that contains a record of past, present, and future, and that people who are psychometric may be able to tap into that record. So that's that location in time space that the person who's doing psychometry is able to perform. So Talbot says all actions, instead of fading into oblivion, remain recorded in the cosmic hologram and can always be accessed once again, which goes with the latest theories on time and the fact that it is a location rather than linear. So it's really hard for us to accept that time is not linear because our perception is very linear. Now, so here's some other things to think about with psychometry. A person who has psychometry can also pick up like negative or bad energy from touching something. Let's think about somebody who's highly sensitive, maybe a clairsentient empathic feeler, and they go to an old battlefield or something and accidentally touch one of the walls, or another artifact that has a lot of death or negative energy on it. That energy is transferred through the senses of feeling. And so empaths and psychometrics have to be extremely careful about areas that they go or things that they might come into contact with. And so it's real important for a psychometric to know how to disconnect from that negative feeling and cleanse that away at the drop of a hat before they become, really ill. So let me check for any kind of questions here. Special shout out to Tom Driver, Mike, Robin, Cindy, Jen, Lisa, and Garnetta. Thanks for joining us this evening. And Dawn. Oh, I didn't see you up there, Dawn and Crystal, and Bob. Awesome, guys. So another thing to think about is that the emotions or the vibrations are strongly recorded at first, but then all of these vibrations tend to attenuate over time. So the psychometric may not be able to pick up on all objects. You may hand the psychometric an object that they don't get anything off of. And it can be that there may be two layers, maybe too many people have handled the object, and there's too many confusing layers of energy there. That's why if you want to have an item read and you take it to a medium, make sure that you haven't worn that jewelry. And it's hard not to, because you want to be close to your loved one that's passed away. But when you put that item on, it's recording your vibratory state at that point, and it may be extremely confusing for the psychometric to try and, kind of weed out those energies or separate those energies. So, or, maybe you've left the item in the drawer for a long time and it hasn't been worn. That energy is going to kind of attenuate and become less, unless it's something from a trauma. Usually I find things from a trauma, really, it's almost like it just happened. It's such a heavy imprint in the object or item, but all energy attenuates. It's like dropping a rock into a pool of water, and the longer it, or the further it goes out, the less ripple you get. That's sort of a natural attenuation, and that's what happens with these items. Some of the best items for me doing a mediumship is handwriting, because you can almost see the vibratory state of that person on the handwriting. I can usually get what they were like, what they were thinking, what the energy was when they wrote it down. And even somebody came in once and they had, all that they had of the person's was some handwriting, but it was on a tattoo on their arm. And so what I had to do was hold their arm during the session and put my hands over the writing of the tattoo, and I actually got a lot of good information then. Special shout out to Rachel Smalley and my cousin Grace Bonepale. Big kisses to you. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, let me make sure there's no questions on the professional page, and we're good. And awesome to see Premium Chat over here and Rising Phoenix. Awesome. Okay, so psychometry, it being under that umbrella of clairsentience and empathic ability, it is a natural ability that is sort of latent in all of us. Now, for people who use psychometry a lot, or who are really strong in their empathic ability, it's very hard for a psychometric to shop online, because we can't touch the item to gain the vibration or information from it. When we touch things, if we're going to buy it, that actually transfers information to us to let us know whether or not we want to purchase that item. Hey to Christy. But it's a latent ability that you can naturally develop if you really want to. And we're going to go through the steps about how to practice this and what would you want to use it for. So before we go into how to practice this, let's think about things that it could really benefit you to use this ability. Number one, buying property. Holy cow, this is really good for buying property. And I can't tell you how many people I've gotten calls from that have me either look at property over pictures or come out and really just touch a few things just to make sure that it's nothing's there and that the property feels good or has a good, positive feeling. This can really save you from a big mess in the future. If you should buy property that is like imprinted with some traumatic event, or let's just say nothing traumatic happened there, but the people inside the building constantly fought, hated each other, anger, drugs, you name it. All of that energy is imprinted into the structure. Now, I'm not saying you can't reverse that, but it takes a lot of work to wipe that slate clean, whereas you might do better getting a different property that's got more positive energy. And if you develop your ability of psychometric analysis, you could save yourself a big headache by being able to touch and receive the imprinted information from the building. Now, one of the things that I specialize in, and I love to do this, It's one of my favorite aspects of being a medium is historical walkthroughs. And so I love to go through an old building. And this is another thing a really practiced psychometric can do, is to almost go back in time and visualize and pick up information about the property when it was something else, or the things that happened at this place before, like hundreds of years ago. And it's really, really neat when I do this type of work and the owner of the property can validate everything I'm saying. That's just so cool to experience. Hey to Jennifer and Veronica. Okay, so, buying property is one of the biggest things to use your psychometric abilities for. But, if you work with gemstones or crystals, using your psychometric ability with these is an awesome gift, and you can really get a lot of information from the recorded crystals by doing that. Buying stuff, purchasing things, you can really tell whether it's going to be a good purchase or not using your psychometric ability. Shaking hands with someone, you can use that sensation of touch and feeling to really sense out the energy from that person. Are they somebody honest and genuine, or do you get a really weird feeling when you touch their hand? Okay, so how are we going to use this ability is what we just went through. Now, here's how you're going to practice it. Number one, choose a location that's quiet and free of noises, okay? You don't want any distractions when you're trying to concentrate on this. So try not to have any distractions if you can. Sit in a relaxed position. Don't lay down because you may go to sleep. Sit in a relaxed position with your eyes closed. Rest your hands in your lap with your palms facing up. With your eyes remaining closed, ask someone to place an object in your hands. The person should not say anything because, in fact, it's really best if you don't know exactly who's putting the item in your hand. So if you have several, it's best if you have several people in the room and one of them puts the item in your hand and you don't really know who that is. So the object should be something that the person who's placed it in your possession has had and used. So let's say we were doing this experiment with you and I placed this item in your hand. This is something I've worn for many years. So it's imprinted with my energy and I love it to death. So there's a lot of attention that is concentrated on this. So this is something that has my energy that you're going to touch. And like I was saying, objects that are metal usually produce the best results because they have a better vibratory memory. So what you're going to do is be aware, close your hand around the item, be aware of any kind of images, flashes of insight, any type of feelings, and really say what you're seeing, what you're feeling. Don't try to analyze your impressions or you will hold back something that is very pertinent. Usually if you try to analyze the fleeting impressions that go through your mind, you're letting your conscious mind take over, and that's going to lead you down the wrong path. The best and the most accurate answers are when it's free-flowing association of exactly what's coming through your mind and the first impression that's coming through your mind at the moment. Hey to Rob Abbott and Sherry and Chastity and Pam. So don't judge your impressions. Say whatever you see, hear, or feel while you're holding and sensing this object. And if you're not getting a lot, just say, I'm not getting a lot, because we don't know if that item hasn't been worn a lot. Maybe there was no attention to the item. And here's an example of that. And we talked about this in the episode, What is an Artifact? An artifact is an item that has an extreme amount of imprinted energy from the person who wore it, carried it, or had it. And you can actually use that energy that's imprinted on that item to connect better with your loved ones that have passed on. Now, some people will bring me keys, car keys. If you're not a person that's really into cars or really excited about your car, you know, maybe it's just a means to an end to get to the grocery and back in the bank, and you're not real excited about it, the energy is not concentrated on that particular item, even though you use it every day. There's a certain amount of energy that's in it, but usually when that person passes on, that energy that's imprinted on there attenuates really rapidly, and then nothing is left. Whereas, let's say, you know, your wedding band, that's something that draws a lot of attention from the owner. It may be something really, really special. And so the energy is concentrated on it. And that energy may last years and years and years and years and years. So that makes it an artifact. So a lot of items just don't really hold that energy. They didn't have the concentrated attention from the owner of the item. So when you're taking an item in or trying to do psychometry on it, if you're practicing at first, get items that you know have a heavy amount of energy on them so that it's easier to pick up energy or vibrations off of it. You don't want to practice with items that have very little energy on them, because you're really making it more difficult for yourself to sense these kind of things. So let's see if there's anything else on here. That is psychometry in a nutshell, you guys. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you enjoy these little Monday night episodes, go ahead and hit the share button right now on your screen and share this out in your news feed. That's one of the best ways to help the show, is by sharing this video around. I do appreciate you guys showing up every Monday night. Let's talk about what's going to happen next Monday night. Next Monday night, we're getting closer to Valentine's Day, and I believe it's next Monday night we're doing the show on the aspects of a life companion, and it's about love. And don't worry if you don't have a companion or your companion is passed on, I'm still including you in this episode, so still watch. Also, next Friday, or the Friday after that, is Valentine's Day, and I'm doing a special Fun Friday, which is going to be a love reading. So look forward to that. Rob says, what I find interesting is when I do palm readings, I actually use psychometry to get info through touch. Yes, that is an excellent way to use the psychometry, is doing palmistry, absolutely 100%. And hey to Chelsea Russell. Thanks for viewing, you guys. I will see you next week for the Love Show. Kisses from Kentucky. Bye, folks. Have a good week.